Hey guys, turkey season is in full swing right now, and if you are planning on getting after it, make sure to pick up some Meat Eater Phelps turkey calls to stuff into the old turkey vest or into your fanny pack right now. I carry a few different things. I like to use mouth calls, and I like to use pot calls. Mouth calls or diaphragms, I like them because it gives you hand-free calling, meaning when you're working a bird up close, you can have your gun on your knee, finger on the trigger, ready to roll, and still be making turkey sounds. I like pot calls because I just like pot calls. I enjoy calling with a pot call. Whatever direction you go, including a box call, which I don't personally use too much, but they're fun and great, and I started out with them. Yanni, on the other hand, one of my main turkey hunting buddies, he loves box calls. And what's funny is I'll now and then look to him and give him the look that means get out your box call and find us a turkey. So it's not that I don't like him. I just have Yanni use his. Then I don't have to carry it. Go to Phelps Game Calls. Get calls that are made in the USA and get calls that'll get them close. Find yours at phelpsgamecalls.com today.
Hey, this is Tyler Jones, and you're listening to the Element Podcast.
Tonight, I need you by my side. Hold on to me and keep me in the light. And when the shadows get long and the whippoorwill song is so loud that it hurts, I need to be with you tonight so I can stay on the bright side of the earth.
What's happening, all my woods people? We are sitting here dreaming about apartments and with our back to this Brookshire's parking lot right here, waiting on the madhouse to clear out so I can go get some jalapenos, cook some ducks. I'm cooking ducks tonight.
That's
actually
tasty.
Christmas Eve ducks.
I did the exact same thing, but not with ducks
Yeah?
for our Christmas tonight. I did with whitetail tenderloin. So,
All right,
yeah.
dude.
Yeah.
All right.
Just a little gamey Christmas up in here.
That's good, man.
Yeah.
That's good. We were just talking whitetails, and we decided we should probably cut the mics on. We tend to do that.
Yeah.
But we just released a video, and it's something that you need to go watch because it was probably like if you combine us as the element, it was probably the craziest complete evening of hunting that we've had as a team, or whatever you want to call us, of the two guys here at the element hunting, and it was like big deer everywhere, man. It's not just one evening, but the one evening was crazy, dude. Like, one of the biggest 8 points I've ever seen was 50 yards from you.
Dude, and what's weird is like you look at him in that film, and he just looks normal, but you cannot get a grasp for how big his body is.
Dude.
But he doesn't
Slob.
he doesn't have that like, whoa, look at that tank on his body either. He's just very proportional. He's just a large critter.
Dude, he's large,
Yeah.
man. Like, what gives away the size to me, especially, is when you look at his body, you know he's a tank body, and then you see like he'll like lift his head up, and you see how heavy his bases look, and that's when you know you're like, that big animal also has big bases. Like, he's probably got a big head, so if his bases look big, that means they're even bigger than you think. It's like, man.
What gave it away for me was that does had been standing in the exact place like 30 minutes before, and I got to like looking like at shoulder height and stuff. I was like, he's a good 7 or 8 inches taller than those other deer.
That doe just left out underneath him.
That's right.
That was kind of weird.
Yeah.
So that was definitely pretty awesome. I loosed an arrow, which was real cool.
Yeah.
I somehow, it was a crazy afternoon for me. I ended up basically from about 2 p.m. on having my mindset on 3 different properties, hunting on a property that I got kicked off on, public land. If you listen very often, you've probably heard that story, but got kicked off, ended up getting a shot at an awesome 10-point. So I won't give away all of it, but it's definitely worth going and watching. It's kind of long, but hey, it's holidays, so you've got time, right? You know,
That's right, man.
You're gonna be sitting around,
Like, hang out with your family as much as you can, and then when things get real weird or people start talking politics, just go watch Element.
That's right. Or if everybody's just sitting there watching football or something, it's like, well, I mean, it's halftime, so I'm just
Yeah.
going to turn on this deer hunting video.
Yeah, that's
But,
right. Actually put it on the big screen for your family.
Yeah, that would be great. Especially the weird politic people in your family.
Yeah, give it to them. Luckily I don't run into that too much in my family.
Yeah.
It's all pretty. I mean, that's kind of one of those Bible Belt kind of things, I think.
Yeah.
There's quite a few families around that are all like, there's the moderate conservatives and the ultra conservatives,
Yeah.
and those are who fight.
It's like we can get along,
Yeah.
It's like you're kind of crazy because of the things you're talking about right now, and you also are in a bike gang, but like it's okay. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But anyway, the video is worth watching, and hopefully you can keep you out of some political conversation that may be uncomfortable.
That's
for
right.
you,
That's
so.
right. The conversation we're going to have today
Yeah.
with our guest is something that we all kind of deal with, and
Minnesotans that deer hunt.
that's right. Yeah, that's
No,
the thing we
okay.
talk about on holidays.
Another
But,
joke.
like the concept of the late season, and it's something that people talk about a ton, but I think it's because none of us have figured it out yet, and it's a tough time of year. Like it's one of those deals where you understand what the deer are going to have to do. They're going to have to eat to survive because it's cold, right? And cold is relative. Like right now it's 71, which is completely not cold, but that's whatever. The thing with the late season is that it's the shortest length of daytime, so that means there's a lot of dead stuff. So the deer don't have a lot to eat, even if it's not cold. So either way, they have to find a way to find some food, and the thing to do is to go find the food. Well, it's just not as easy as what it sounds like. I have a hard time this time of year, man.
I think that it's relative. It's just like we talk about with dudes around here. There are dudes that live here in our area in East Texas that we know live around our hometown that kill every year. They kill a nice buck, and it really is just like a matter of that guy has access to a pretty good property. You know what I mean? And it's not necessarily that he's rich or whatever. Like it's just this dude, his uncle has 43 acres. That's in the right spot. You know what I mean? And the 43 next to it is okay. And that guy may kill one every other year or every 3 years. And same thing on the other side. But for some reason, this guy is on the river or whatever it might be. And so he kills every year. And I think that is kind of the thing with the late season sometimes is if you have the property or the access to some property that has the food source that they prefer this time of year and there's really nothing else around, then I think you can really be successful this time of year. If there's a bunch of food around, then you're going to have to get a little luck, and you might be that guy that kills every 2 years or whatever in the late season. And then if there's no food around, then you might as well just get in front of the fireplace and hang out for a little while because you're probably going to struggle, but not to try to keep you from going out this time of year. Your boy T has struggled in the late season to get on deer, and it's not over yet. But I think my Kansas hunting is over, and that is definitely where Mr. December struck out this year. So
Yeah, dang, man.
unfortunately,
Stinks.
But
I ended up staying up there a little bit longer than you did this past time, and had some misfortune. But I think we'll probably cover that in another podcast.
yeah, we definitely can cover that.
It's just tough deal, but we'll talk about that more later. Man, I am excited for next year in Kansas, as weird as it is to talk about that now.
No, I've been too.
Just because, I spent more time this year than I ever have up there, right?
Yeah.
So, I learned a ton. And really, we're kind of on similar paths because before, your type of hunting was just different than what you're doing now, right? Like, we're out getting permission, hunting public, all this kind of stuff. So we're kind of in the same spot as far as like knowledge acquisition goes. And I just feel like next year I'm going to slay all the deer.
Dude, I'm telling you, I feel the same way too, dude. Like I think I was maybe texting you about this or we talked about it when we were up there, but like, it's crazy how much I feel like I learned this year. You know what I mean?
Man.
Like,
Nuts.
we did this type of stuff last year. I've been up there for almost 15 years now. Like, I've learned a lot over the years, and I feel like this year I learned a lot. And maybe that's just because I'm hunting some new properties, and that's what happens. You learn when you hunt new properties. But like, there are some definite takeaways that I have that I think are going to really put us in position. And frankly, not having Iowa next year is there's a good chance that like we can focus down on Kansas and really make it happen when the rut's going on up there, you know. And that's one thing that kind of hurt us this year is going back in the late season. We didn't have the greatest of food sources around us to focus in on, you know. And I think also, I think like we've been able to put together a considerable amount of acreage up there for permissions, and I think that not that hurts us, but I think that we should go maybe spend some time this offseason, and we'll get into this all later in a podcast, but I think we should spend some time this offseason going, okay, where are the 4 or 5 spots that we need to focus on? We need to have food here, or we need to have a stand here that stays there so we don't have to get up super early and hang in the cold or whatever. Like, where are the things that can make us be advantageous for us to kill, and that way we're not like jumping around all through November to different stands going, well, I hope something's happening over here.
Yeah.
You know?
I did a ton of that. Like,
Yeah.
spend a day and a half in a place. You know,
I think the wind affected us some.
Yeah,
there.
it's true.
You know what I mean?
But I can tell you this much: if we don't have a stand in a particular cedar tree at the beginning of the season next year, we're idiots. Is
Yeah.
all I can tell you, because it's the place to be.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was the difference in me getting a shot at a giant 8-point and not, is because I was too lazy, or I mean, I had reasons for not moving the stand that morning. You know, making a bunch of noise, this and that, whatever. I guess that was the 9-point that was the difference, but still.
Yeah. I did the same thing with kickers, if you remember. Like, same thing. It was a morning hunt. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna hang here. And like, I've talked about this before when it happened, I think, what I did wrong. And, you know, you can kind of justify things sometimes. So you can play tricks on yourself in the season, you know what I mean? Like, where you can justify, like, oh, well, it makes sense to hunt this side of the tree line because the wind is from that direction. But you know what? They tend to kind of, I think, move through here, or I can see where they would do this, you know, and you're just like, golly, I don't know what to do.
Man, after hunting that place a lot, though, the tree line isn't the place you kill a deer over there. But
we can go on.
We can go on and on about that.
It's going to be a good podcast, at least for us. And we talked about this. We're going to do this. We're going to do like probably a recap here in the next week or two of Kansas and talk about the things that we learned. We're going to use some code language and all these different things.
Because you sneaky snakes are out there.
That's right. And we're going to really just deep dive on this stuff. And I hope that you guys can learn something out of it. And I think that you can. But I also know that for us, in a selfish way, it's going to be something really good that we can look back on about September and August of next year and go, oh, here's what we were thinking after the season. I totally forgot about that, you know?
And if you have, like, some good ideas about how to do more than just reflect on a season, but, like, how to keep up with what you learned or whatever, just maybe just some insights like that, send us a message on Facebook or something. That way, maybe we can kind of cover that in that podcast. If you've had, like, because we talk about doing this all the time, where, like, we go back and, like, all right, we're going to learn a lot. And then I feel like we kind of repeat ourselves sometimes year after year. We learn some things, but there's things that are lost. So if you've got a good way of keeping up with that and, like, retaining those thoughts from January all the way up until, you know, late September when you start putting these things into practice, just hit us up and let us know what your thoughts are on that.
So let's get some tips from Bernie Barringer on hunting the late season, and then we'll come back to you on the other side and see you off from there. Sound good, KC?
Sounds good.
All right, so now on the phone we have outdoor writer and author Bernie Barringer. Bernie, what's happening, man?
Hey, I'm sitting here looking out the window at some turkeys trying to make a living in the snow here.
That's cool.
That's cool. That is cool, man. We don't have turkeys in where Casey and I live. We actually do not have turkeys. We're one of the few places in the U.S. that is void of turkeys. So
yeah, they've really expanded here in northern Minnesota the last 10 years or so. They've just exploded.
Yeah, we can't say the same. We we actually have the NWTF working pretty heavily in the eastern part of Texas where we live, but we're in a weird spot kind of between DFW and where turkeys start to the east of us. So we're hoping that some co-ops and that kind of thing can get going and they can start stocking a little bit more heavily and get that, because I feel like that's a good species for like high school kids to go chase. You know what I mean? It's something that you can get permission to go hunt as opposed to deer. You know, it's not as high dollar and such a crazy market for it, and they don't necessarily people for some reason they like it when you shoot birds more than they like it when you shoot things with fur. A lot of times, you know.
Yeah,
what I mean?
it's unfortunate, but that's kind of true. And
Yeah.
I've just got a small property here, but I got it pretty well set up for wildlife, and I've just got a few acres. But I have every year, it seems like in the spring, some young guys come driving up in a beat up old pickup and ask if they can shoot turkeys, and I say, "How many do you want?" You know.
How many acres you got?
I just got 5 acres, but it's surrounded by 700 acres of state park.
Oh, nice.
That's no hunting. So,
Oh, man.
That's a good find, man. KC actually just bought a small property as well, like 11 acres.
Yeah,
or so?
it's a little over 11 acres, and kind of the same deal where it's surrounded on a lot of the area around it. At least is private that doesn't see any hunting pressure. So it's kind of cool to have a small property that you can not really manage as far as antler size goes or whatever, but at least you can do a few things, and it seems like they really pay dividends because of all the good habitat and stuff around it. So this is my first hunting season on the property, and seen some decent deer, and but it's just been fun. I love public hunting. It's what Tyler and I do a ton of, but there's something to like having your own little piece that nobody else can go on, and you can just kind of go out there and relax and hopefully see a deer. And if you don't, it's okay too,
Yeah, that's exactly what I got here. And, we're not in an area that produces a lot of big bucks, even in a state park type of situation. But ever so often I'll get one on camera and I go, ooh, look at that one.
Yeah.
But, I can, friends and I usually fill our freezers with does every year out here. And I just tell my buddies, come and shoot a doe if you want. Just don't shoot any of the little bucks. I'm trying to, see how we can grow them. And it's, we do see some pretty decent bucks, but we also, we also just have a lot of, I just got 1 acre that I plant into brassicas the 1st of August every year. And the bow season here opens the middle of September, and literally, we get our first frost usually sometime mid to late September. We start getting a couple hard frosts, and when those brassicas get frosted, the deer come in like a lawnmower and just, just mow them down. So all my buddies are like, come shoot a doe, man.
Yeah, no kidding, man. So do y'all live in a pretty high deer density area there? It's just not a lot of older, mature bucks?
Yeah, it's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of an interesting thing to me because you hear different pockets of the country talk about how hard the hunting is and stuff, and I believe it for sure. But I think that we've kind of skewed it to where a lot of people when they say that they really mean it's hard to find a good quality buck. But there's a lot of places around the whole country it seems that you can go if you want to go shoot a deer. Like there's a lot of good high deer density areas that probably they would appreciate you coming to shooting a couple does so the rose bushes can live,
Yeah, that's really true. But there's a lot of those people. Outdoor television over the last 20 years has created quite a movement of people from the states where they maybe have high density deer populations. And you just, people are watching Michael Waddell shoot a 150-inch buck every other week, and they're like, man, I don't even see deer like that where I live,
Yeah.
And, it's created quite a movement of people that just want to go to I call them the destination states, like, your Iowa, Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, the Dakotas, and I think it's outdoor TV. And now, the online forums and Facebook and stuff like that is driving a lot of people to do that more than ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel like that's the kind of, I know that you do a lot of traveling and bow hunting and stuff. Do you tend to gravitate towards those, deer states, or are you kind of countercultural in that? Do you try to go, and kind of find the hidden gems, or at least just get away from people?
I'm primarily looking for places to go where I have a chance to shoot a buck that's 3.5 or older, and that's not everybody's goal. But for me, I've been on over 30 of these road trips where I went to another state to hunt. And so I kind of have my own personal baseline of 3.5-year-old buck. And it's not easy to do on public land, even in the best states, but I found some pretty good pockets, and I got one spot where I've I think in 5 years I killed 3 Pope and young bucks,
Wow.
and literally almost out of the same stand, in just one little pocket. But I love doing it. I really enjoy the challenge of the traveling and the learning and all that.
Over the years, have you seen where people being driven to these states through outdoor media and TV and this and that has maybe created a void or an opening in another state or other states that are pretty good, where people just aren't traveling to that as a destination state, but it's still a great place to go shoot 3.5-year-old plus bucks?
Are you looking for you want some advice on what states might be?
No, I'm not necessarily. I don't want your honey hole or anything. But have you seen a trend that way at all? Where because you were talking about how all these people seem to want to go to these places, and I fall into that category as well. I finally drew in Iowa this year and went to Southern Iowa and hunted and shot a buck, and it was an awesome hunt. But at the same time, it's always good to know. It's nice to know that Alaska's still out there as a frontier. In other words,
Yeah.
it's good to know that there may be other places that you could go and logistically shoot a 3.5-year-old buck.
And there are some states that are kind of overlooked. I think North Dakota, I would say, is one. If you look at Iowa, everybody wants to go to Iowa, and that's the reason they want to go to Iowa is because it's worth it, even though you're going to end up paying over $700 for a whitetail tag, by the time you get your preference points and everything. And, but the reality is Iowa offers 6,000 non-resident deer tags a year, and they have 20,000 applicants for them. Mm-hmm. So it takes you 3 or 4 years to draw a tag. And, but it's their formula is really good. Their public land is not overrun with people. Mm-hmm. And, there's just really good high quality deer there. So, that's just one example, but there's a lot of different states that Missouri's kind of a bargain. For $250 you get 2 deer tags and 2 turkey tags for fall. And, there's tons of public land in Missouri. Missouri has a lot of public land hunters, and a lot of people travel to Missouri to bow hunt, especially during the rut. But one thing about Missouri is they've got this 0.5% sales tax that just goes to wildlife conservation. So Missouri has bought a lot of public hunting land that's good quality habitat for whitetails.
That's cool.
And and then the wide open spaces of the West, like southeastern Montana, Oklahoma's kind of overlooked. Nebraska is a little, I'll tell you what I like about Nebraska. You can buy 2 buck tags in Nebraska for bow, non-resident bow. You can buy 2 buck tags, and they're good for either whitetails or mule deer. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's areas where you could shoot both,
Yeah.
So
that's and really it's gotten to where now a mule deer tag that might be the only over-the-counter mule deer tag you can get now. Is that right? I don't really remember for sure, but
yeah, I think there's a few others, but they're getting scarce. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's getting harder and harder to draw in like Colorado and stuff. So it's a great opportunity if you want to. Like for me, for instance, we live in eastern Texas. There's not any mule deer there, and it's just kind of something I've always dreamed about. Getting to shoot one, and it's kind of if you're talking about opportunity. If you're going to travel, you kind of want to travel for opportunity. It's great to go somewhere. Like, for instance, to go to southern Iowa and go hunt big giant bucks is awesome, but you only get to do that once every 4 or 5 years, right? So you want to go somewhere maybe with at least a decent amount of targets, or like you're saying there, like you got a multi-species tag. You're hunting a food source, and oh man, look what that is walking by. I can shoot that too. It's kind of a nice. It's just a nice feeling to have that in your pocket.
Yeah, exactly.
So this time of year, let's kind of get back to it. First of all, we might have even kind of skipped over a little bit, but I just want the listener to kind of understand who Bernie Barringer is. You're kind of an all around outdoorsman, correct? You've kind of come up in the trapping and written books about bear hunting and that kind of thing as well, right?
Yeah, according to my wife, I've figured out how to make a living without having a real job.
You figured it out, man.
Yeah, I did. I was a full-time commercial fur trapper in the 1980s, and When that fell apart, I went back to college. I didn't go back to college. I went to college and got a degree in journalism and started writing, and have published over 1,000 magazine articles now. And I guess I kind of lost track, 14, 15, 16 books or something like that. And so, yeah, I've been able to kind of find a couple of niches. And bear hunting is one. I write a column in each issue of Bear Hunting Magazine, and I write for most of the bow hunting magazines. I do a lot of their bear hunting stuff. And then the whitetails, of course. I'm a diehard whitetail bow hunter. And, travel each year to different states and so forth. And still trap a little bit. There's just not the money in it to put the time in that I used to, of course. But I like to snare a few fox and coyotes in the winter and so forth. And, we're allowed 2 fisher here in Minnesota. I usually try to get my 2 fisher each year. But the trapping thing is, it used to be a job for me. Now it's, just a little bit of chance to get out and enjoy it,
Yeah, sure. So you're going to have to expand on the fisher thing a little bit, because A, I didn't know there were any in Minnesota, which it's just, being ignorant, but B, why the drive to make sure and get your 2 fisher?
Well, where I live, there's quite a few fisher around, and it's just, they're just a fun animal to trap, because you get out in the snow. And the one thing about fisher is they're very predictable. If you see a fisher track, chances are within a week that fisher's going to come back, and he might run down the same track, or he's probably going to go through that area within 50 yards of where he went through last time. They usually have a big circuit. They like to run. They like to run the edges of beaver ponds and things like that. And so, they're just fun to trap.
That's cool. So, are they like when you're trying to get your 2? Are you looking for a pelt on those, or
Yeah, they have. It's not like it used to be. They have pretty good value. It makes it worth your time, I guess. A good fisher's $60 to $80.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
What do they use them for?
It's fur coats. A lot of them go to China. A ton of the U.S. fur nowadays goes to China, because wearing furs over there is not considered kind of taboo like it is. A lot of people just, if you're going to wear a fur coat in the U.S., you're probably just going to have something with a coyote collar on the hood or something like that, or maybe a fur trim or something like that. But there's parts of the world where people are still wearing furs for full fur coats.
Right. Yeah. So what's weird to me is, and I don't know, I don't know a lot about this, but from what I understand, a fur coat can be a really expensive thing, and it seems like furs, you get paid less and less every year for furs. It seems like their value is going down for each pelt. You know what I mean? And do you have an idea of that market and why it's doing what it's doing?
It sort of fluctuates. There was a spike here about 2014, 15. There was kind of a spike in the value of a lot of the furs. Coon furs went up, and the trappers that had a lot of traps in their garage, a lot of them went out, caught a bunch of coon, and there was a little more money in it there for a while. But it really fluctuates based on demand, and demand is driven by style. And it's also the price of furs, because it's almost all exported now. The price is really dependent on the value of the American dollar too. So there's a lot of moving parts in it, but it's like, shoot, in the 1980s, I could make a living by, I made probably half my yearly income by trapping for a month.
Wow.
And, now, you can fill your truck with gas. That's about what you got.
Yeah. Perpetuate with your hobby there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm kind of into getting permission to hunt on private places right now. It's kind of a thing that I've been doing the past couple of years. Have you ever gotten permission to whitetail hunt a place because you first obtained the trapping permission?
I actually have. In fact, years ago, that was really common. I would just get to know the people and beavers. Man, I'll tell you what, beavers are the best thing that ever happened to whitetail. If you know how to trap a beaver, if you know how to trap beaver, you can get permission to deer hunt, because there's a lot of farmers that they got beaver going up in their cornfields and cutting the corn stalks down, and they're damming up the drainage ditches and flooding their soybeans.
You know, we saw that in Iowa this year. I didn't know they would do that, but man, beavers, they're pretty detrimental to some corn. It was surprising.
Yeah, they definitely are. If you can learn to trap beaver, it'll get you on some good property to deer hunt.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's cool. Might have to. Do you use conibear traps, or how do you usually trap beaver?
Yes, 330 conibears, sometimes footholds, snares.
Mm-hmm.
When they're regularly coming out of the drainage ditches or creeks and going up into the farm fields, snares work really good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, would you say that a guy, say I'm a diehard whitetail guy, just say that, right? Like, I'm not saying I am or anything, but say that was the case, would it be well served of me to go knocking doors saying, hey, do you have a beaver problem? All the while knowing that I have this angle working that I kind of want to whitetail hunt this place. Is it worth the time, or are you better off?
I wouldn't just go to it. The short answer is yes, it'd be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
The long answer is you're better off to just find out where the beaver problems are. And sometimes your county, they're out there with a backhoe trying to tear out dams, and the beavers haven't built back within a week,
Mm-hmm.
And so if you just go out and see where there's creeks that are flooded, then go find the landowner. That'd be the way I would do it. I don't do much of that anymore. But when I lived in Iowa until 2001, and that's where I trapped. And man, I got a lot of places to hunt based on people that I just knew, farmers. I think at one point when the fur prices were really good, I think I had permission on 36 farms.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
Next year I'm going to have 3+1 points in Iowa, and since you don't live there anymore, I probably will. I probably will bring a couple conibear traps up there with me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I got Iowa points too.
So speaking of that, not that I'm trying to get your spots or anything, but if you had an extra one out of your 36, but do you maintain like good contact with those landowners? How does that work? Because I'm just kind of figuring out this permission thing, especially out of state. What's overbearing when you're trying to like maintain a good contact and have a good relationship, and then what's not enough?
That's a great question. And let me start by saying this: when I was a kid, I started bow hunting in 1973. I was 14 years old, and I could just talk to any of the farmers in my church, and they'd all give me permission to bow hunt. And they're like, so you're going to try to kill a deer with that,
Were you shooting a recurve, or did it have 6 wheels on it or
Yeah,
something?
I started with a recurve, yeah. And so I think it was more amusement for them. But, nowadays, all that land is leased or a lot of it's been just bought by wealthy hunters from the cities, Chicago and Minneapolis and St. Louis and stuff like. There's a lot of people buying up land. And I've had some interesting experiences where I had permission to hunt a piece that was 70 acres. And I went to talk to the fellow about 3 weeks before the season. I said, just want to check and make sure I got permission to hunt here again this year. And he said, yeah, but I got to give you a key. We got a new gate out there. I got to give you a key to the gate because all of the land completely surrounding my 70 acres was bought by some guys from Columbia, Missouri that have a deer call company. And they bought something like 400 acres all around this 70 acres. And I said, was it named Drury? And he's like, yeah, I think that's it. And so literally he gave me a key to get through the Drury's gate so I could drive across their property to hunt this 70 acres that was his. And, unfortunately, that was 30 years ago, and I didn't know what I was really doing like I do nowadays. I could have killed bigger bucks in there if I'd have known a lot more about it, But it was interesting. The first few years when Drury's were putting out videos after they'd bought this property, they'd be like, we call this the swing set stand. And I'd be like, I know right where that is. I drove right by that. And so that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But, Yeah, I mean the thing with property is you kind of read each landowner differently, and some of them just they want to really get to know you, and others are like, yeah, just don't drive on the hayfields when it's muddy, and make sure you shut the gate, and we'll talk to you next year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I always at least send them a Christmas card, and some of them I'd be like, you want some venison summer sausage? They'd be like, yeah. So they're you kind of have to gauge each of them. I'd use, you wave at them when you go down the road, or if you see them out, combine and corn, I'd run out there and just jump in the combine and ride a couple rounds with them, see how they're doing. A lot of them want to have a little bit of a relationship with you, so they know you can be trusted. So, I guess that's kind of a long answer to a short question.
No, it's good. It's a very complex situation.
So, what about, we've run into a situation here and there where, say the landowner is a really old person and they don't necessarily live on their property, but maybe their son or grandson does, or daughter, or whatever it might be. And you talk to the landowner and you've talked to the son or grandson, and neither one of them seem to care at all. It's almost like they don't even want to really, they don't really even want to talk to you again. They just are like, hey, go out there, do whatever. I'm kind of disinterested in talking to you. Do you stay in touch with them year to year, or do you just hunt it until somebody tells you, yells at you and tells you to get off of it?
Yeah, I always at least tell them that I'm going to be out there. Hey, I'm planning to hunt your property again this year, and give them a chance to say no to you.
Oof.
I ran into, I ran into a situation kind of like that one time where I finally asked the guy, I said, can you just say yes or no? And he's like, if I say yes, I might be liable in insurance, my liability insurance. Mm-hmm. He said, so I'm not going to say yes, but I'm not going to kick you off.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, I get that. I mean, that never even occurred to me. And he told me, but he just didn't want to say, yes, you can hunt here. He just basically, look the other way.
Yeah.
Because of that. Yeah. Liability insurance is what he was concerned about.
Yeah. Tyler and I had this conversation the other day about how it might be nice to keep a flyer or something in your, not a flyer, but just a piece of paperwork that's like a quick little permission slip that also includes like, hey, just, some liability for the landowner.
Waiver.
Like a waiver.
Yes.
Like a waiver or something. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a great idea. In fact, some states, you have to have written permission on you mm-hmm. when you're hunting someone else's land. The laws vary so much. In North Dakota, if the land's not posted, you can hunt it.
Yeah, mm-hmm. That's sketchy.
And and then other states like I think it's Iowa, where they have a law that you have to give a trespasser one warning, and your no trespassing sign serves as a warning. So if you aren't posted, then you can kick somebody off, but you can't prosecute them until you catch them on there again.
Huh.
And I think that used to be that way in Iowa. I'm not sure if it still is, but man, when you go hunt another state, if you're not hunting public land, you really got to know the laws. And really, truly, if you are hunting public land, you got to, of course, know the laws, but they can get pretty complicated when you get off on private.
Right. So speaking of that, when you travel to hunt, obviously you got to read the rule book, the regulation book, but sometimes still that can be confusing for some people. Are you trying to talk to locals and that kind of thing to really understand the laws when you go out of state?
Yeah, I wouldn't sometimes, but sometimes the locals don't know them very well either.
Yeah.
And, so you want to make sure you're up to speed. And, I was hunting in Missouri one time, and there was a guy that owned some property. He owned just a small piece of property. Maybe it was like 15 or 20 acres. It was right beside the public hunting area. And I come walking out one evening with my stand on my back to the parking lot of this public hunting area. And the guy, he drives up to me. He says, yeah, I live right over here. And he said, if you want to hunt my property, you can hunt mine. I'm like, oh, cool. And he says, yeah, I just shot a forkhorn that was eating my flowers in the backyard. I'm like, you shot it with a rifle? It's bow season, She's like, well, don't worry about that. It was eating my flowers. And I said, yeah. I said, that property on the other side of you there, man, that looks really good. Do you know who owns that? And he goes, yeah, those people, they live in Missouri, and I never see them up here, so you can hunt that too. He said they live in St. Louis. He said you can hunt that too if you want, because they're hardly ever up here. And I'm just like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
That's funny, man.
And I actually walked out there and put some trail cameras out there, and then cheapers, I got a great big buck on camera, and so when I went out there to check the camera, I was just started looking around. I'm going, man, I'm just not really comfortable with this, but I'm going to go check my camera, and I got this picture, a great big 10-pointer on this camera. And so I walked over the next hill, and there's a tree stand.
Oh,
and I went, you know what? I'm out of here. I can't do this,
Yeah, for sure.
Man. Yeah, that's okay. I'll mark the talk to locals off the list here.
It is funny though how many people kind of, I don't know, in their home state in rural areas, like, laws are guidelines, and it's not like they're trying to be bad about anything, but there's some laws regarding fur-bearing animals, like where we're from.
Dogs.
Like, dogs. Now, like raccoons and stuff. Like, technically you're not supposed to. It's wanton waste if you just shoot a raccoon, leave it live. But a lot of people go out at night just to, hunt coons and just don't really do much with them. And not really saying that I support those notions, but it's just kind of something people do. And it's weird how game regulations, once you start really digging into stuff, you're like, whoa, wow, I might need to rethink this whole thing that I'm doing right here, And
And the one thing, if you're going to talk to locals, the questions I would ask the locals are, where are you seeing the deer?
Yeah.
What are you seeing bucks chasing does, or have you seen any big ones? And a guy will say, yeah, there's a great big one run across in front of my headlights the other night, right down at that corner there. You go down to that corner and there's a really good trail there or something, So sometimes, they'll give you a nice nugget that pays off.
Yeah.
When you're traveling out of state like that, we talked some about the permission stuff, and you've mentioned public. Are you usually going with the intention of going somewhere there was some good public access and then maybe finding some permission while you're there? Or are you doing like your homework in the summer, calling landowners and trying to find some good private to hunt?
I'm pretty much always just going to hunt the public.
Yeah.
And there's been a couple times when I've got permission on adjacent private property, just kind of lucked onto it. I guess there's one time I'm thinking of where I saw that the deer were moving out into a cut cornfield from the pub. They were bedding on the public, and they were going out into the cornfield to feed. And there was a nice ditch, I guess, or a ravine that came off the public, and all these deer were walking and going right out of the point of that woods. And I went and talked to the landowner. He goes, yeah, you can put a stand in there.
Yeah.
So, but most of the time I'm not going to spend a lot of time just going around trying to get permission, because it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And, if I'm going to hunt another state, I'm going to be there a week or 10 days. I better just put my time in hunting and not knocking on doors anymore. The guy has to.
Yeah. So what time of year are you doing all this planning for these, like say you've got your 2020 deer season? Do you have that planned out already, or is that what you're going to kind of do in these, cold, dark months of winter that we have coming up?
Yeah. Actually the best time to do your planning is in the winter, because the states where you have to apply for tags, they're mostly, in the spring or late winter.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've got, I think I have to check. I think 2 preference points in Iowa. I got a preference point in Kansas. So I'm not going to know for sure which one of those 2 states if I'm going to hunt. And then I'll do one draw state probably, and then one over-the-counter state. I don't have to worry about the over-the-counter state until, later.
Mm-hmm.
But because things change in these states, realistically, the amount of water you get a lot of rain, and it can change the deer behavior. And I drew Kansas a couple years ago, and the river that goes all the way through this huge public hunting property that I hunt was completely out of its banks. And, all the public land, the fences were not that far from the river, and the water was right up to the fences. And, I couldn't hunt there.
Yeah, right.
Because, all the deer had been pushed off onto private land. And that strange stuff like that can happen. I hunted western Nebraska this year, and the public property that I was hunting out there they had a really good pheasant population out in that particular area this year. And the first 2 days I passed up a couple of smaller bucks, a 2.5-year-old 8-pointer, and then it just the weekend was absolutely slammed with pheasant hunters. And I mean, there were so many cars parked along the road, and the orange and the dogs running everywhere, and they literally drove all the whitetails off the property in one weekend.
Man.
And they never really came back. By Monday, I just went out Monday morning and drove the roads at daylight, glassing, and I saw bucks chasing does. This was in first week in November. Bucks chasing does all over out on private property in the hay fields and so forth. And they never really came back onto the public land. So I ended up, since my tag was good for mule deer, I ended up just kind of going up in the hills and trying to spot and stalk some mule deer. Had all kinds of fun. I ended up not getting a buck, but I had lots of fun with that.
Yeah, imagine. Man, that's something definitely to think about. And that kind of stinks with the whole draw system sometimes, and how you can draw a tag in the summertime and that you've been putting in for several years that can be affected by late summer rains or something like that. Definitely kind of stinks. So when something like that may happen, okay, for instance, let's just take it to we're looking at a state that is over the counter. And you've got if you're planning out your season and you want to go to 2 out-of-state hunts, one of them you've drawn, so you're going there. But the other one is an over-the-counter tag that's going to happen in, late November or whatever it might be. And then you notice that they get a lot of rain, it floods. Are you still going to go to that state? Are you going to buy your over-the-counter tag right before the hunt, or are you going to buy it in advance? And if so, how do you adjust to that situation when you know that some kind of natural disaster, I put in quotations, but something naturally happens that is going to make it a tough hunt for you? And then how are you adjusting to that?
Yeah, I typically don't buy an over the counter tag until I get there and look things over.
Gotcha.
I'm doing all the planning ahead of time. I've usually called a biologist, land manager, game warden, or somebody and talk to them. I like, a lot of these public lands, they plant food plots and stuff like that on it. So you want to call a biologist and say, hey, where are the deer really feeding on? What do you got planted here? And, that's all stuff that you do in the summer before you get there. And it really gives you a good idea. But, I actually I went to Kentucky one time. Kentucky has a opening the 1st of September, and I was trying to shoot a velvet buck at that time. I'd never shot a velvet before that point. I have now, but this was quite a few years ago. And I went to Kentucky, scouted. Man, the first day, I walked a lot of miles, put some cameras out, and by the second or third day, I didn't buy a tag, and by about the third day, I'm like, man, this is not going to work. So I'm not going to spend the $200 on a deer tag. I stayed another day. I think the fourth day I finally came home, but I thought, you know what, until I get something going, I'm not going to go spend the money on a tag.
Right.
And I never did. So I just went home.
Yeah.
But I've since hunted Kentucky successfully, but that's just one of those situations where, every so often you just it just doesn't work,
Sure. Yeah. So in that situation, are you ever trying to salvage that 10 days trip that you had set aside, where you go, okay, well, that didn't work, and I've still got money in my pocket that I was going to spend on the tag. On the way home happens to be Ohio, or whatever, and so I'm going to stop there. Obviously not in the early season like that. They probably aren't open,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean? Like, are you ever trying to salvage a trip and hit something on the way back home, or do you usually just go home, regroup, and try to make something happen a few weeks later, maybe?
No, I will usually try to go somewhere else and try to, I've been so many places now that if I get in my truck, I'll go, yeah, boy, I'd sure like to get back to that piece of property and such, or, I'm just going to, I block off 2 or 3 weeks. First half of November every year it's bow hunting somewhere. So if it doesn't work in one state, I'm going somewhere else. Or, there's been times when I killed out early and I thought, well, shoot, I got another week left. It's worth going somewhere else. And I do some offbeat stuff. I've done some, here's an example. One time, I was planning to hunt in North Dakota in the end of October. And I went to Montana for an early season hunt. Montana has opens around the 1st of September. And so I went to Montana, southeast Montana, for an early season hunt. On my way, I stopped and put out 5 trail cameras where I was going to be hunting in North Dakota. And 2 months later, I went back to North Dakota, and 4 of the 5 were still there. One of them wasn't there anymore, but 4 of the 5 were still there on public property.
That's pretty good odds, really, 4 or 5.
And the thing is, I put 2 of them in these steel boxes so people can't get them. And one of them that was gone, they went home and got a hacksaw and cut the lag screws off the back and got the box.
Yeah, I've always wondered that about those things. It seems like you're showing people that it's worth some money when you put that steel box on there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess that's true. But I'll tell you what's worth the money is the information. You can buy you can buy a good trail camera for $100-$150, but the information that's on that card is what really hurts.
Oh yeah,
you can't go back to the store and buy that. So I've done all kinds of different things like that to try to get as much information gathered as I can before I ever show up to hunt.
So let's talk a little bit about sleeping arrangements and stuff. We've done some truck camping, some truck sleeping. This year on Tyler's Iowa Tag, we spent some time in a motel, cheap motel, because it's freezing cold for guys from Texas up there, And to be honest, it was a cold late October. I mean, we got snowed on quite a bit. But, it's always something that's kind of a concern when you're going out of state is where you're going to stay, what are you going to do, and that sort of thing. Have you found any secrets or tricks to like finding a inexpensive place to stay that has a heater and some running water?
I've done just about everything you can think of, and in fact, in my book, I go through this quite a bit.
Oh, cool!
Because that's one of the questions that a lot of people ask, and especially like I go do traveling deer hunter type seminars, and people are like, I don't know, shit. A motel's like $80 a night, and do I do this? Do I do that? And so I cover that quite a bit in the book, and the reality is a lot of these small town motels in the types of areas where you're going hunting, they'll work with you.
Yeah.
You can say, look, I'm going to be here a week, can you make me a deal? Mm-hmm. And they usually will. And I'll just say, you don't have to clean the room every day, just make sure I got clean towels or whatever. And will you do it for this? And if I leave early, I'll still pay that,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll usually go for that. There's some states where you can actually camp on the public hunting area. And I've got a travel trailer that I sometimes will take and just set up in the parking lot of a public hunting area, or if there's a campground nearby. There's a lot of different ways to do it. I've tent camped. I've camped in the back of my truck. There's lots of ways to save money, and if you're hunting on a budget like most of us are, then you got to try to find the best deal you can. Sure. And food is another big issue too. What are you going to eat?
Yeah.
And that's what I like about, I just take a crock pot. If I'm staying in a motel, I'll just take a slow cooker, and I throw, I make meals up ahead of time, and they're frozen. And then I just throw them in a crock pot and turn it on low when I leave in the morning. And when I come back after dark at night, after a long cold day in the woods, and maybe I got some roast beef or something like that in a crock pot that's hot.
It's a good idea.
And I'm a big believer in getting at least one good hot meal in you a day.
Oh yeah.
And you don't want to go dry. I could starve to death in a McDonald's parking lot. You know what I mean? I just I don't like their food. So if I want to eat, I probably want to go to a restaurant if I'm going to eat out. But you start doing that every night, and especially you come back in the evening and you want to get your gear ready for the next day. And the way you're dressed, you feel like if you're going to go to a restaurant, you got to change your clothes, and it's expensive. And so I rarely go to a restaurant when I'm hunting on a road trip.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I feel you on the McDonald's thing. I think where we might differ a little bit is KC and I are pretty big fans of Taco Bell.
Oh, okay.
But it's not something you find in rural deer hunting areas very often. So
and the crock pot idea is great. I don't know why I've never thought about that, because crock pot is designed for the person who's busy all day and gets to come home and the meal's ready, right? So it makes sense that a deer hunter would use it. So great tip there, man. I did this year. I did some of the like MSR pocket rocket that you would take on like a elk hunting backpack trip with the butane and that kind of thing. I would take a can of soup and just make sure you buy the pop top. And so you don't have to have a can opener with you, and you just put the can of soup right on top of it and stir it while it heats up for a couple minutes, and good to go. So it's another way to do it.
Have you tried the Dinty Moore beef stew?
Yes, it's good.
Yeah, it's got the pull top on most of those, and you can heat those. You can heat them up in a microwave, or you can just put them in on any way you can produce some heat. When I was trapping, I used to take a can of soup and lay it on the exhaust manifold in my truck. And then when I was hungry, I would just stop and have a hot can of soup,
Yeah.
And there's pretty creative ways that poor people can can do this stuff.
Sure enough, man.
I think there's guys that like have YouTube channels about how to like cook baked potatoes on your truck and stuff like that. I think you carry it a little bit too far, but I think that there's definitely some creative ways to have a hot meal. Whenever you're roughing it.
Yeah. So speaking of traveling and this time of year, it's December, it's the late season. Up there where you guys are at, you were saying earlier, you guys have already had like over 40 inches of snow. We've had 0 in Texas, as far as I know, where we're at least where we are. And but we're up here in Kansas today, and so we're kind of living the story right now of the late season, just staying after it, trying to stay warm, and hope to happen upon a decent buck. If you were heading out today in December, what tactic are you most likely to employ to kill a buck?
Well, it's pretty much all about the food right now. The bucks are worn down from the rut, and they need high carbohydrate foods, corn, and soybeans. And if there's any acorns or anything like that left that they can get to, they need to put fat reserves back on for the winter that's starting, and I would say my strategy would be try to figure out where the thermal bedding cover is, where they're trying to get out of the harsh weather. It's going to be like in a bend in a creek bottom where there's a lot of willows, or they're going to be looking for areas where they can get out of the weather. Unless it's sunny, then they might be bedding on the south slopes of hills where they can get some solar energy,
Mm-hmm.
And if you can figure out where they're bedding and where they're feeding at, the patterns are going to be pretty predictable right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I like about the early season too. I love going early September because the bucks are still in these bachelor groups, and they're just, you catch them completely off guard because they're just going from food to bed every day. And, if you can get in the right spot, you got a really good chance at them. This late season's pretty much similar to that. Mm-hmm. And, find a place where you can keep warm. You don't necessarily have to get in a tree. That sometimes it's just hard to stay warm in a tree when it's really cold.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. I understand. So I got a question for you in regards to the solar bedding, I guess, that you spoke to earlier. This time of year, I feel like it can happen a lot of times where you get a high pressure, like clouds move out the day before or the night before. You get high pressure in the morning. It gets really cold and sunny. And so a deer is probably going to want to, for instance, this morning, same situation. It's probably going to want to bed down in the sun out in CRP grass or something like that. Like you said, facing south possibly, trying to get some sun when it's 15 degrees and, and just freezing cold, and they've got sunshine that can warm them up. So a lot of times when that happens the middle of the day or later in the day, it can really warm up quite a bit to 55, 60 degrees, maybe even sometimes. So is a deer going to, at what point does the temperature get so warm that day that the deer is like, I've got to get out of this CRP or off this south-facing slope, and they make a move? At what point in temperature and what time in the day do you see that?
It's going to be their comfort level, It's going to be at what they feel like, if they start to become uncomfortable, they're going to move. Mm-hmm. And that could be at completely different temperatures based on what time of the year it is and how acclimated they are to the cold. Or, if you have really cold weather in 1st of October, when the deer really don't have their full winter coats yet, they're going to be in a completely different spot where they are if it's the same temperature 1st of December, and so they might move multiple times during the day, but they're not this time of the year. They're not going to go far from the food.
Okay. So even when they adjust that bedding in the middle, if they were to adjust that bedding in the middle of the day, they're going to try to stay close to food is what you're saying.
Yeah. And sometimes they might just go to food if they get uncomfortable, and they might, let's go get something to eat,
Sure. Yeah. Makes sense.
On your feet, might as well go do something. How much do you think that deer respond to calling during the late season? I know that where we live in Texas, the rut is not near as pronounced. It's much more widespread. So at any point in time, it might be a good idea to rattle or to call to a deer. But if you're in this time of year in an area that's, a more traditional rut dates kind of area, so you're a month off of that, and, you've got deer that are on a bed to feed pattern like you're talking, are they going to hear something like that and say, there must be a late doe, I need to go check that out? Or are they going to hear it and be like, that's weird, I'm not going over there?
Yeah, in the upper Midwest, calling and rattling does not work well after, say, the 3rd week of November. Mm-hmm. I think calling and rattling works the best in the states that I hunt in the Midwest, the last week in October to the first couple weeks in November, and then it really tapers off. And particularly rattling, because they gotta be really in a rut state of mind to come to rattling. And shoot, I've been on deer hunts in Texas in the middle of January when rattling works.
Oh yeah,
and it just there's not much point in bringing the rattling antlers. In December in all the places that I hunt anyway.
Yeah, for sure. Now, what about with the grunt call? If you see a buck, walking, we're not going to say cruising because it's kind of the wrong time of year, but you see a buck walking at 150 yards, are you going to try the grunt just to see if you can get him to come over?
It can't hurt. Basically, either a deer turns and comes to your grunt call or he ignores you.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've ever had a negative response, a severe negative response to a grunt call. So
you haven't hunted East Texas enough. That's right. Yeah, they get weird down there, man. But yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, they usually they either just ignore it or they'll come, and they're less likely to come the later in the season it gets. I'll put it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What about? I don't know if you're a scents kind of guy. I'm kind of have mixed opinions on them, but sometimes it's every little thing helps. Do you think that bucks do perk up with the scent of an estrus doe, and would you use an estrus scent later in the year?
I use doe and heat lures from the middle of October, right into, I wouldn't say late December, right now, they're all about food. So it's around here. I mean, like I said, we've had 41 inches of snow already this year.
Oh.
They're just trying to make a living right
Yeah,
now. They
sure.
don't care. They couldn't care less about going to ascent. But man, in late October and through November, I've had really good success getting deer to. I use it to get them in front of a trail camera.
Yeah.
Like a scrape dripper or good fresh scent in an existing scrape with a trail camera on it. That's one of the best ways there is to, inventory the deer that are there. And I use it on these hunts when I'm going for a week or so. I'll make sure I get any time in November that I'm hunting, or from the last week in October on, I'll make sure I get a couple scrape drippers with some active scrape lure or some of the best, like Golden Scrape is a good one that's put out by Wildlife Research Center. That's a really good one. And you can inventory the deer on the property pretty well by getting some fresh lure in those scrapes and a trail camera.
Yeah, for sure. So how you said basically if you know where the food is and you know where the bedding is, that's kind of late season. They're going to be bed to food pretty hard, kind of like early season. So are you hunting closer to bedding typically or closer to food, and how do you typically like to set up this time of year?
The hunting pressure is way down this time of the year. The rifle seasons are over and the deer are starting to relax a little bit. You know what I'm saying? So they're coming out into the fields earlier than they typically would. And so I'm generally trying to set up a little closer to the food, but just off the fields. A lot of times the bigger bucks will still hang back. The does and younger bucks will go out in the open, and the bigger bucks they'll be 20 or 40 yards back in the woods, just kind of wait until it's almost dark, or kind of observing the deer that are out in the field to, raise their comfort level before exposing themselves. So that's typically where I'm going to be, is 20 to 40 yards off the actual food source.
So like, are you working? Do you typically like to be, if you're going to be in, for instance, a field like that? Is it a inside corner area, or are you going to be just back off of any trail that you can find that you think is a good heavy trail going into that?
Well, I usually, if there isn't snow on the ground, of course, if there's snow on the ground, it's really obvious where they're entering the field. If there's not, then I'll typically set up a stand somewhere where I got the wind to my advantage and I can see the entire field. And I call it an observation stand. And I'm not as much actually trying to shoot a deer as I am trying to figure out where the best spot to kill one is the next day or the day after that. And just try to really get a feel for where these deer are coming into the field, and then make your move.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So do you have any more Minnesota tags that you're going to get out there and brave that 41 inches of snow with?
I do have a tag, and I've got a few does that are coming out here to paw through trying to get to those radishes that are in my food plot. But I don't know if I need another deer in the freezer that bad right now. So
it sounds like you're ready to go hunt some key deer or something.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I used to, and I killed 2 bears this year too. And I used to be, when I raised 5 kids, my wife and I did, and they're all gone now. So we're like, how much venison do we really need? And, but man, one time, I think my son Cody was about 5 years old, and my wife went and bought ribeyes for my birthday, and I grilled the ribeyes, and he's about 5, and he says, what are we eating here? And I said, that's beef. It comes from a cow. And he looked at me, he goes, you shot a cow? And, that tells you how they grew up.
Yeah, no kidding. That's funny, man. What are you doing with that bear meat?
I love the bear meat.
Yeah.
I'm most breakfast sausage, summer sausage. We do a few roasts in the slow cooker, but mostly just use breakfast sausage and summer sausage. I got a lot of videos on my YouTube channel about bear meat and how to make it into something really good. Bear meat's pretty good depending on what the bears have been eating. And if you're hunted baited bears, they're eating grains and pastries and trail mix and stuff like that, and they're pretty darn good eating.
Yes, they sound like me.
I call them sugar finished.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
That's pretty good. That is pretty good, man. Well, it sounds tasty. It does for sure. I hope you. If you don't need the meat, I guess do you ever do any of the donation things like the Hunters for the Hungry or anything like that?
Not very often.
Yeah.
Those are great things, though. I love it that people have that opportunity.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think I've never done it either, but I've definitely done the toss a buddy 10 or 15 pounds of meat kind of thing. I think that in some way, shape, or form, it's pretty good to be able to share that stuff. Usually between Tyler and I, it's hey, dude, I had a tough season, so can I have some? And that's where I'm at right now, and that's why I'm glad that you were on here to kind of give me some confidence as to why I actually can still kill a buck with only 2 weeks left in the season. So thanks for that.
Yeah.
So
cool.
I guess the next couple of months we've got late seasons in a lot of the northern states, I guess, and you've also got some kind of wacky ruts that happen in the south. In the areas we're from, we're actually kind of like right in the heart of the rut in South Texas, and then there's going to be some just crazy things that happen, from what I understand, in different parts of the South. Do you ever take off and chase any of those late rut hunts this time of year? And if not, what else is out there this time of year that's fun?
I've only hunted the South. I hunted South Texas twice, both times in January, and there was some rutting activity going on. It was primarily over, I think, but there was some rutting activity going on. And in fact, I've killed 120, 130 deer with a bow, and the only 2 that I've ever killed with a rifle was in South Texas.
That's right.
So
that's how they do it.
That's how they do it. And you sit in a blind, and where I was at, it was just a guy that invited me to come down and do a story. And I don't know if you've heard of the big Muy Grande buck contest in Freer, Texas.
Yeah.
Okay, so as a fellow that was a friend of the guy who owns that gas station and all that, and he said, "Why don't you come down and do a story on this Muy Grande big buck? It's like the oldest big buck contest in the U.S." And I said, "That sounds like fun, but I don't think I'm gonna drive all the way to Texas to do the story." He says, "Well, you come out to my place. I'll buy you a tag and you can shoot a management buck." And I said, "You're on." And so I went down and did that, and it was just all kinds of fun. And of course, they don't trust you to recognize a 5-year-old deer, because a management buck is a deer that's 5 years or older and 8 points or less. Mm-hmm. So they send somebody out to the stand with you, and you sit in a box blind out there with your rifle, and he said, "No, you can't shoot that one. No, you can't shoot that one." And then here comes a really old one. Look at that one there. Can I shoot that one? He said, "Yeah, you can shoot that one." So I shot him as a big, old, mature 8-pointer. And then he goes, "Shoot some javelina." And I'm like, I'm about to shoot a javelina. And he goes, "No, wait till there are 2 of them together and shoot 2 at once." And you just watch, they'll kind of cross back and forth. So I waited till 2 of them were lined up, and I shot and killed both of them. And he's like, "Nice," So that was all kinds of fun. But
That's awesome.
Realistically, I don't think I'm an expert on where a guy should hunt in the South at this time of the year, because if there's snow on the ground and if it's cold, these deer are really predictable in the Midwest. But I better not say much about areas that I haven't done.
Well, what about, is this ice fishing season for you, or do you go and do something else? I know you mentioned, and I can't remember if this was off air or not, but we talked about how you and your wife were really wanting to see some palm trees this time of year.
Yeah, I was joking with her. It was 23 below this morning. I was joking with my wife before she went to work, like, let's just get in the truck and drive south until we see palm trees, And but we get pretty stir crazy about February. Ice fishing's big up here. I'm not much of an ice fisherman. Being an outdoor writer, I spend an awful lot of time in front of the computer meeting deadlines and getting stories that are going to go out next summer and fall. I got to get all that done. But ice fishing is huge up here. They have some tens of thousands of ice houses out on some of the lakes, and they plow roads out to them and everything like that. It's big business up here.
Sure, yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. Well, Bernie, we appreciate you coming on and doing this. For the listener that's interested, man, how they get a hold of your books and also your YouTube channel and that kind of thing.
Yeah, my YouTube channel is called Bow Hunting Road, and there's a lot of whitetail stuff on there, a lot of bear stuff. I do a few whitetail hunts that I put on there. I also do a lot of instructional stuff on everything from trail cameras and lures and things like that. A lot of road trip stuff, a lot of information about how to be successful on a bow hunting road trip far from home. And that's what my book's about. The book's called The Freelance Bow Hunter. And if it's on, you can get it on my website or on Amazon or anything. My website's bucksbullsbears.com. And you get on there and just click on buy stuff and you'll find the book. And that book is just really done well. I mean, it's such a tight niche. I thought, do I really want to write a book about just for the guy that's traveling to another state to hunt and how to save money and where to stay, how to hunt public property, and things like that. And, I hunt public property really aggressively. And it's been, the book has done really, really well. And Tom Miranda did a real nice review of it that helped. And so that's bucksbullsbears.com. You can find that. And then the YouTube channel is Bow Hunting Road. And I never set out to be a YouTuber, but I got 8 million views and 13,000 subscribers now. So
all right.
It's really taken off.
That's great, man. That's proof that what you're putting out is good stuff, man. So
thank you.
We will we'll have to link to that in the show notes. So if you're listening, make sure look through the show notes and find where you want to go next. Bernie, appreciate it a lot, man. I hope you stay warm up there. And if you get a chance to fill that tag, send us some pictures.
I'll do that. All right. Thanks. I appreciate it.
All right.
All right. Thanks, man.
You bet.
Well, I am definitely not jealous that old Bernie has had weather that is literally 90 degrees below what we're sitting in right now.
My goodness.
Maybe almost 100. It was,
Yeah.
what do you say, like 20 something below, right?
I don't know. It's freezing way too cold for me up there.
It is 71 here, and it is not nearly that up
I've
there.
thrown around the thoughts of going up there and hunting in October, and I'm afraid that I might freeze to death in October up there. So I don't know. I don't know if I can handle it.
Yeah.
In that video, 1 degree
Yeah.
shows up. And it's not 1 degrees, by the way, guys.
It's only one.
1 degree.
It's singular.
It's singular. 1 degree shows up in the YouTube video.
Yep.
That is unreal.
Let me tell you this. We didn't look. It had been dropping, and we didn't look after that. It
Yeah.
might have been zero.
Might have hit zero. Who
0
knows?
degree.
I do know.
Is it 0 degrees or a degree?
It's I don't know. I
That's
feel
a tough
like
one.
ooh.
Because it's not singular or plural. It's that
Yeah.
point. It's none.
Ooh. What's the inverse of zero? No one knows. So that morning, you had on like a toboggan that I didn't even know you had on because I didn't look at you. It was that cold. Like, I'm pretty sure I had on my like murder mystery mask and like I didn't move anything except my eyeballs. Like I was afraid to move my neck because maybe wind might get between my cuff.
We saw some good deer movement. Otherwise, I don't think there would have been any B-roll happening.
No,
But,
it was tough, man.
Yeah, that was a cold morning, man. I hope I don't hack some people off while wearing that beanie, but that's an old beanie that I just had. and
The
I was
Nike one?
Yeah.
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 They make hunting boots, even though they're anti-hunting. So whatever,
Okay.
whatever you want, whatever.
I thought somebody would get me on that, possibly. So I hope everybody's okay with me wearing like a 10-year-old beanie from Nike.
Yeah. Were y'all in Nike school at SMU?
We were the first 2 years under
Yeah.
Bennett. Yeah. And then we were Adidas,
Yeah.
which was dumb after that.
You didn't like Adidas?
No.
Really?
Not at least back then. I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever gear they were giving us back then, I think they were just getting into American football.
Yeah. They were wearing
So-
cotton. Yeah. Here's some cotton shirts for you.
Yeah, the Nike stuff was legit though,
Yeah.
man. I still have a bunch of it. Stole a bunch of it.
Yeah.
Which they gave it to us, but pretty much. Got a helmet or two, some
Yeah.
gloves.
Hey, guys, these are going to be outside today. We're throwing them away. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
But
anyway.
anyways, we froze to death that morning, and which I'm glad that we've heard a little bit about how to shoot deer when it's super cold, because I hope to never have to hunt it again. So it'd be great if I can kill in October for the rest of the time. But we didn't this year, so that video was so good for, 24 hours?
Yeah, I think that's right.
That passed in that whole amount of time?
Yeah.
Lots of big deer.
Was there an afternoon hunt in there before? Or does it just morning?
We were in the big cottonwood.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Also freezing to death. Actually,
also saw the big 8.
It is, I guess it's 32 or whatever, 36 hours because that morning it was snowing sideways.
Oh, that's right. We didn't do anything.
Nothing happened.
Yeah. We sat in the truck and watched it pelt the side of your glass.
That's right. And laughed a lot, probably.
We did. So then we hunted that afternoon and saw the big 8, and that's why you went back in there, I guess, that next day or whatever. And so
which was a good idea.
It was a good idea. It was just maybe the wrong tree or something. We definitely made some wrong moves, but we're figuring this stuff out. When you're hunting new properties, man, stuff like it's going to happen, you know. So you're out of state. You only got a few days to get it done sometimes, and then things change the next time you get up there. So. I was thinking the other day, I'm hoping that we can get out and do some hog hunting after the season because that's a good time, and I've been thinking about it a lot. I'm hoping that we can kind of have a good hog hunt this year because we've been a couple of years without really seeing just a ton of hogs on public around here.
Which
in
is
Texas.
dumb, but I think part of it's because we are whitetail hunters through and through, and almost always am I choosing a place like, I'd also like to see some of the whitetail activity in that area, and I think there'll be hogs in there. So I think that happens a lot for me at least. But I bet you we can. And shoot, I might be needing to. That way, I've got something to eat besides chicken.
I got some deer meat for you, bro.
Oh, cool.
I've been wanting to do. I mean, I don't know why. When you get to this point in the season, a lot of stuff starts to creep into your mind as far as like fishing, which we were talking about earlier.
Since it's 71, right now.
Yeah, the squirrel hunting stuff, which I have grown to really enjoy. That squirrel hunt or two that we do every year, small game Saturday kind of thing, and then the hog hunt as well. If we're going to be able to pull that off, so I'm hoping we can do some fun stuff like that in January and February instead of go ATA. But anyway, we will see if that happens. We like I said, we said earlier, the video is out. It's really cool. I'm going to try to release the last part of that video, which is also pretty insane, in the next day or two, probably like a day or two after Christmas. And so once that happens, I'm probably going to bring a duck hunt next to the table, even though chronologically it's out of order. There's some pretty popular themes during this duck hunting video that you guys will get to see. So I think it's timely for us to do that, and then we'll get back on track with. I think Iowa's up next after that as far as our series go.
Things die.
Things die.
That's all we're going to say.
That's right. So
that's cool, man.
Anyway.
That's exciting. I'm ready to see that vid. I mean, I've seen just a little bit of stuff from it, but I wasn't there for that whole trip, so that'll be a fun thing to see. And I wasn't there for the duck hunt either, so I'll be interested to watch that as well. Those are always fun.
Yeah.
Well, Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yeah.
It's a fun time of year. Honestly, I need Christmas right now. As weird as that sounds, it probably doesn't sound weird, but to me, like, I just kind of need something, not a break from hunting, but something to make sure that I don't just concentrate and be so single-minded on just hunting and killing deer, right? And this year it comes at a good time for me. So I'm glad we're having a good Christmas. This is the last Christmas for me and my wife without a baby.
Just as a couple.
As two of us. So we're going to kind of enjoy it, but look forward to the future. Guys, if you're at a family Christmas, make sure that you're involved, plugged in, because family's a pretty precious thing. And we talk about it a lot, and the older I get, the more I really start to realize like how important it is to even make sure you have a conversation with people you don't even like to talk to that much sometimes. To tell you the truth of the matter, because even if you're not that close, you're probably going to miss them one day when they're gone. So cherish those moments. If you talk to somebody this Christmas and the reason for the season comes up, make sure you expand upon that, because it's a really like feng shui thing to say, the reason for the season. But if you don't get into that and actually comprehend, or like at least explain to someone that, Christ being born is a big deal because he died is a big deal, and was risen, and that's a big deal. Like the whole thing's the whole story, right?
Yeah,
and if not to get off on a complete tangent, but I mean, this is stuff that you and I are both pretty passionate about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if that's something that you want to know more about, and maybe you're like, why do you always talk about that? And shoot us a message. I mean, if there's anything I want to talk about more with you, or there isn't anything I want to talk about more with you than that. So, anyways, guys, hope y'all have a really Merry Christmas. And
I've got a shameless plug.
Oh.
My church has been doing a podcast.
Let's hear it.
It's called Asking for a Friend.
Yeah.
If you have any, we've been doing, so throughout December, we've been doing episodes in kind of like in regards to Christmas. And so like, questions like why the wise men, what should I do about Santa Claus, different things like that. Like how should Christians approach Christmas, all those different kind of subjects. And so I actually run it and I guess MC it or whatever, and produce it. And then some of the elders at my church are the guys that weigh in on all this stuff. So anyway, just some thoughts. If you're interested in listening to podcasts other than us and the Meat Eater, then you can go check out something like that. It's called Asking for a Friend. It's by Believers Baptist.
Yeah, lots of smart
Church.
dudes on that podcast, man. I'm looking forward to the Wise Man one because I did a study on the Magi a couple weeks ago.
Ooh.
So I want to see what y'all got to say because it's kind of interesting stuff.
Yeah, they go through the history of that and
the history,
the historical of that. So yeah, apparently all the smart guys on that podcast are not me. So.
That's not true.
Anyway, appreciate you guys listening. Merry Christmas, like KC said, and remember, this is your element.
Live in it.
Hey guys, turkey season is in full swing right now, and if you are planning on getting after it, make sure to pick up some Meat Eater Phelps turkey calls to stuff into the old turkey vest or into your fanny pack right now. I carry a few different things. I like to use mouth calls, and I like to use pot calls. Mouth calls or diaphragms, I like them because it gives you hand-free calling, meaning when you're working a bird up close, you can have your gun on your knee, finger on the trigger, ready to roll, and still be making turkey sounds. I like pot calls. I just like pot calls. I enjoy calling with a pot call. Whatever direction you go, including a box call, which I don't personally use too much, but they're fun and great, and I started out with them. Yanni, on the other hand, one of my main turkey hunting buddies, he loves box calls. And what's funny is I'll now and then look to him and give him the look that means get out your box call and find us a turkey. So it's not that I don't like them. I just have Yanni use his. Then I don't have to carry it. Go to Phelps Game Calls. Get calls that are made in the USA and get calls that'll get them close. Find yours at phelpsgamecalls.com today.